Beloved, never avenge yourselves, but leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. No, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The word of the Lord.
Have you ever heard the term white elephant? White elephant. Probably most of us have. Have you ever received a present which turned out to be a white elephant gift? That ever happened to anybody before? I have quite a few stored away in different places. Every family, just about every person, has their stories about white elephants. Those usually hilarious, always useless objects that sit in our closets, our basements, our attics, year after year. Because we just do not know what to do. For some reason, some strange compulsion, we hold on to it. We don't even know why. We just don't know what to do. White elephants have even been turned into a Christmas game. Some of you probably have played it before. In the game, family or friends gather to exchange gifts, with each person bringing one wrapped contribution. The gifts are placed in a central location, and participants determine in which order they will take turns selecting them. The first person opens a wrapped gift, and that person's turn ends. On subsequent turns, each person has the choice to either unwrap a new present or to steal another's. When a person's gift is stolen, that person can either choose another wrapped gift or can steal from another player. And the game is over, but finally, everyone has a gift. Sometimes those gifts can be very nice, but the whole point of the game is to have fun. So most of the time, the gifts are ridiculous things, those things that we have a hard time getting rid of. In fact, if you play the game regularly, you still can't get rid of it. Because if you play the game with the same group year after year, you know what's going to happen. Eventually, your white elephant that you gave away is going to come back to you. It happens all the time. Ironically, the white elephant gift originated in Siam, which is modern-day Thailand, as an act of subtle revenge. In the ancient history of Siam, the king would give a rare albino elephant to those in his court who had fallen out of favor or who had offended the king. Since any albino animal was sacred, it had to be cared for throughout that animal's lifetime. And believe me, feeding a cat is not as easier than feeding an elephant. And since the white elephant was a gift from the region, it could not be refused. Eventually, guess what would happen? The unfortunate recipient would go bankrupt, lose all of their money and their possessions, trying to feed and maintain that elephant. And after all of his or her resources were gone, guess what happened? The king would take the elephant back so he could gift it again for the next act of royal vengeance. Hence the term white elephant. The act of revenge, whether subtle or conspicuous, passive or violent, has always been an instinctive part of our human nature. Sir Walter Scott, in his novel The Heart of Midlothian, perfectly describes the essential definition of that word when he writes, "Revenge, the sweetest morsel to the mouth that ever was cooked in hell. Think about that. And how could we argue with Sir Walter Scott when we see those acts of revenge played out in the story of Jesus of Nazareth? We see Peter and the apostles take out their swords in Gethsemane to strike against those who have arrested their Lord. We see the Passover plot, an elaborate scheme of revenge cooked up by the high priest of the temple in response to Jesus' popularity and the growing belief in Israel that he might be the true Messiah. When Jesus stands in judgment, we see Pilate reluctantly respond to the threats of vengeance by those of the crowd who promise to report the governor to Rome if he allows this dangerous rebel to go free. Even as Christ hangs on the cross, one of those executed with him mockingly calls upon Jesus to take revenge. Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us. In response to this ancient human cycle of threat and revenge, we see Jesus, the Son of God, tell Peter and the apostles to put away their swords, even as he heals the results of their violent response. We see Jesus surrender himself silently to the high priest, to the religious leaders, to the Roman governor, without saying a word. Even on the cross, his response to those who call for vengeance from him is one of forgiveness and mercy and unconditional love. Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. With the death and resurrection of Jesus, humanity learned a new way to respond to our will to vengeance. A new way expounded to us by Paul, as we just heard in his letter to the Romans. Beloved, never avenge yourselves. No. If your enemies are thirsty, give them something to drink. For by doing this, you will be heaping burning coals on their heads. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. That one word, no, it's a hard one, isn't it? It is a word we hate to hear. And yet, it is one of the first words that any responsible parent or caregiver or pet owner teaches. To say no to our deeply embedded instinct for revenge is the very essence of both Christ's teaching and of his life. But Paul also knows that our ability to respond to that inner no cannot be isolated from our natural desire for justice. We still want things to be made right. And that is why the apostle says this: leave room for the wrath of God, for it is written, vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. What is Paul saying there? Paul is saying that revenge is an act of sinful humanity. Justice is an act of a good and loving God. Revenge versus justice. Now, reading Paul's words, we might think that he is just transferring violent vengeance from the human to the divine, especially when he uses this rather odd and seemingly ugly image. By doing this, you will heap burning coals on their heads. That doesn't sound too Gentle? Doesn't. But Paul's image of burning coals is not to be associated with hell or some eternal punishment. In the time of Paul, slaves would carry hot coals in thick wooden containers balanced on their heads in order to heat the homes of their owners or provide fuel for cooking. Paul's image in Romans is not one of revenge or divine revenge, but of burden. Burden. The ability for followers of Christ to forsake great or petty vengeance takes that burden out of our hearts. When we forsake it and leaves it with God, who will do true justice apart from our feelings, because God always knows the truth. And we always don't. We always don't. We may think we do. We may think we understand our actions or the actions of others, but sometimes we just don't. One of my favorite songs is one titled "The Heart of the Matter" by Don Henley. And as he sings about forgiving his lost love, he explains in these lyrics why. There are people in your life who've come and gone. They let you down. They hurt your pride. You better put it all behind you, because life goes on. You keep carrying that anger, it'll eat you up inside. Is that not true? Paul's words and Henley's modern interpretation is exactly why we come to this table this morning. It is why Jesus Christ gave us, we who believe in Him, this table. Recall once again the words of Sir Walter Scott: revenge, the sweetest morsel to the mouth that ever was cooked in hell. The morsel we share this morning at the table of our Lord was cooked in heaven, and the spiritual sweetness of the bread and the cup quench our bitter thirst and our ravaging hunger for revenge. The white elephants that keep coming back to us in our lives, whatever they may be, are permanently taken up by the love of Christ and the justice of God, freeing us from the hurt and anger that retribution demands. In the movie Ben-Hur, there is a crucial scene that summarizes the effect of Christ's death on those who encountered him. Ben-Hur speaks to Esther after he has witnessed the crucifixion. In marveling at Christ's response to those who crucified him, Ben-Hur explains the transformation that changed not only him, but potentially all humanity for all time. Ben-Hur says, almost at the moment he died, I heard him say, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." Esther replies, "Even then?" Ben-Hur says, "Even then. And I felt his voice, 'Take the sword out of my hand.'" Wow. This morning there are swords that need to be removed from our hands and from our hearts. And that is why we have the gift of this table. It is Christ's no, not only to our desire for vengeance, but to every unworthy instinct that plagues our sinful condition. This sacrament is God's no to our sin and Christ's yes to His grace for all of us. So what burdens do we bear this day. Let us bring them to this feast, and let us leave them where they belong, in the place that Christ gave us to leave them, on this table